Welcome back to College Football Addiction. I've got Drake C. Toll in our video presented by BetUS talking a little Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State this year, Drake, fell flat on their face and certainly didn't have the year that was expected of them. And then we get some drama in the offseason with I'm a man, I'm 40. We all know the soundbite, right? Mike Gundy and rumors that they may fire him for cause if he doesn't sign this contract, this, that, and the other. He does end up signing the contract. Are things a mess right now at Oklahoma State, or do you think that putting all this behind them, they can now move forward and rebuild, or a little bit of both?
You know, I've always supported Mike Gundy at Oklahoma State because he's got the longevity. He's been the most successful long-term coach in the Big 12 that we've seen since maybe a Bill Snyder. And the biggest issue here is it's a guy that may have outstayed his welcome in the eyes of a lot of Oklahoma State fans and obviously in the eyes of the Oklahoma State administration. If it's true they gave him the ultimatum of sign this restructured contract or we're done, no questions, no negotiation, then that is them saying we are fed up with this and something has to change. And we've seen in years past a guy have success at a school that was previously middling. You know, you mentioned like a prom at Purdue and the games he was able to win and always rumored for the Arkansas coaching job. Or a couple years ago, will he go to TCU? Will he go to Baylor? There were those question marks. And Gundy, to be honest with you, has not shied away from job hunting and utilizing his leverage while at Oklahoma State. He's interviewed or at least been in talks with multiple universities about being their head coach, with mostly an opportunity to get more money out of the athletic department. I think at this point, the athletic department is fed up. They're done. You went 3-9 this past season with a roster that had 21 returning starters. At some point, it's the same players. The coaches have to be held accountable. He held on to his buddies, the offensive and defensive coordinator over the course of the year. And then when push came to shove, it was Mike. You've got to re-sign this contract in a different way, or we're going to move into a different direction. And to be honest with you, TJ, the biggest piece of this to me was this happened in the wrong offseason for Gundy. There wasn't a job sitting there. Arkansas wasn't open for Gundy to hop over. He didn't want to go to Purdue and UCF, the interconference team. He doesn't fit a UCF, given Orlando and the state of Florida in general. He is all things Oklahoma and kind of that region of the country. And so when there wasn't that TCU maybe or a Texas Tech sitting there waiting to scoop him up and say, hey, come do it your way here, he was kind of left with no other option but to re-sign that contract or maybe even get out of coaching altogether.
Do you think it works out? Do you think he can change? People talk about like Dabo being stubborn, and I won't necessarily put him quite in that category, but just I think it's a fair enough comparison. Do you think it'll work out? Do you think he'll change enough to where this can be successful?
Here's the biggest problem. I want to say yes if he had 2 years to figure it out. He doesn't. He has 1 season to figure this thing out. And last year they were in the Big 12 championship game, and he's been there for 2 decades. You've got to give the guy a bit of a leash, right? He's stubborn. He's hard to work with. He's somebody the media hasn't really gotten along with. He's the soundbite guy. He goes to Big 12 media days this year and says, oh, yeah, Ollie Gordon got a DUI. Well, if I was going to get a DUI for every time I've driven after drinking 3 or 4 beers, I'd have 1,000 of those. You can't say that. You just cannot. And he said it in front of the cameras at media days, So he is, with his comments and actions off of the field, he has really cut his time even shorter at Oklahoma State. If he had 2 years, he could right the ship. But the question becomes, can Mike Gundy handle the pressure to win right away? He's never really had to do that. Now that he does, I don't like the chances next season of Oklahoma State being a huge player.
The big picture thing that I look at is just the restructuring of the contract to put more money back into the athletes. Do you think that that's more indicative of a shift in college football to where ADs, athletic departments, programs, universities understand that coaches maybe aren't worth 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 million dollars and we need to invest back into players? Or is this a more Oklahoma State specific thing where there were some issues with Gundy, or could this be a college football shift? I'll get right back to the video, but first I do want to give some love to our friends over at BetUS. The bowl season is coming, the playoffs are coming, and you can bet on all of it over at BetUS.com. Use our code YouTube150, that's YouTube150 for a 150% bonus when you sign up using that code. That's on your first deposit. Your next 2 deposits are at 125% each. All of that up to $2,000. We appreciate BetUS for their support this season. And the betting is not done. Neither are the games. Make sure that you're using YouTube 150 when you bet at BetUS.
There will be universities. I think Oklahoma State is one of those that just do not respect what NIL should be. Hey, look, T. Boone Pickens is one of the largest donors at a university in history at this level, and somebody who gave a lot of money to Oklahoma State. And, they're at a point now where that money has always gone to the university and building facilities and having big coaches. Now that it has to go to the kids, is Mike Gundy that kind of guy? Is Mike Gundy the guy that says, yeah, sure, I'll give my money, my contract to the players? Obviously, he didn't want to. This wasn't a very positive situation for him. So while there are coaches, Kenny Dillingham, or even Dave Aranda at Baylor, or Kalen DeBoer at Alabama, who can become more CEO types and understand, all right, this is a kid who's going to make more money than our offensive coordinator. That's the nature of the game. Mike Gundy might always be too stubborn to relent in that category. And if that's the case, I just think it's going to be hard to win. Even a Matt Campbell is starting to open up and say, all right, our NIL will never be elite, but let's give these players what they deserve, put them in a great spot, and go win football games. I don't see Mike Gundy being that guy. Again, if he had 2 or 3 years to build upon, hey, we're going to not do a ton of NIL, Dabo Sweeney, we're not going to do a ton of NIL or a ton of transfer portal. We're going to do things our way. If he had 2 or 3 years to do it, maybe. But he doesn't. He has 1 season, and that's a tough thing to do.
The idea of firing him for cause, and I'm asking this out of complete ignorance.
Yeah.
Are there underlying things that they could have fired him for cause for? Was not signing the contract cause, or what was the threat there? Or what really could they have done?
Yeah, I mean, if Mike Gundy really wanted the buyout, he probably could have gotten it. I don't see there being cause, and if there was, it would have to be more public than whatever the conversations were behind closed doors. You had old players that would come out and say that Gundy had made racist remarks, and some of those may be founded. I don't know. I wasn't there, and there have been no official reports or official police reports of some sort of hate speech that Gundy has spewed out. So until we have something tangible, I think it's tough to say that there would have been actual cause to get Gundy gone. Whether that's, look, agree or disagree with his politics, he's been very loud about what he believes. And I don't think that's something you go and say, hey, we're going to fire this guy because he believes X, Y, and Z, or because he said X, Y, and Z about a DUI. It's just not enough. Does it toe the line? Sure, but I'm not sure that Gundy could have been fired for cause. But at the same time, I think Oklahoma State said, look, we'll pay you the buyout at this point. We just want to get rid of you unless you sign this contract or we hold on to you under these stipulations. It does seem like, though I wasn't in the room where it happened, that is the case.
Prediction time. Does he coach all 12 games next year?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think that it's what's so tough is when you got a 2-decade guy who's in the conference championship last year. The last thing that I want to do is give the idea that, hey, we are in such turmoil as an athletic department, we're going to fire the guy midseason. I think Kyle Whittingham gets a bit of this too. We're not going to take this dude and say, you know what, midseason, we're done. We have seen, TJ, it's so easy now to pick up a phone, call a coach in week 11 and say, hey, there's a very good chance we're making a move. Would you be interested? That happens. Whether or not you fire your coach, there will be talks and conversations that go on. That comes from, that goes down to players. There's a level at which players in week 12 are getting a DM from somebody's friend of a cousin who was their trainer in high school, where we are going to gauge the waters and test whether or not you'd come coach for us. I do believe that's the route Oklahoma State will go ultimately, rather than making a change in season, because it's always embarrassing when the Mac Brown deal happens and Mac comes to the podium and says, I wanted to coach our guys one last time. They completely locked me into leaving before that game. That's a very embarrassing look, and other coaches are not going to want to be at your university when that is your rhetoric. So I do believe Oklahoma State will hold on to him for the duration of next year.
Big picture for Oklahoma State, I'll ask this and we'll wrap up. Can they get to where they are elite in the Big? Like, if they move on from Gundy after next year, can that program get back? Can they get back to where they're competing in a power in the Big 12?
Yeah, I'm not going to shock anybody by saying this. Stillwater is a tough place to win. Morgantown is a tough place to win. Ames, Iowa is a tough place to win. Fort Worth is not. Waco really isn't that bad, and obviously anybody in the Scottsdale area or even the Salt Lake area, you've got access to a big city or a big recruiting pool. Stillwater is really tough to get that. If you built a team of just kids from Oklahoma, they wouldn't win a dang football game, and I say that as somebody from Arkansas. So can they rebuild without Mike Gundy? Oh, it's going to take an innovator. It's going to take somebody who's got a different gear, a Kenny Dillingham type, that's got something that brings a guy into a tough situation in Stillwater to win. I think you're seeing it with the basketball program right now. They stink. They really, really stink. And for football, it might be the same case if they do move on from Gundy, a guy who's proven he at least can win there.
Drake, where can people follow you for more Big 12 content, more Oklahoma State news, and beyond?
Yeah, at LO Big 12 on Twitter or at Drake C. Toll on that same platform, and wherever you find your podcasts at Locked On Big 12.
Awesome, man. Appreciate you. Appreciate BetUS for their support, buddy. We'll talk to you soon.
Always great.